but what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing to our foreign affairs and foreign aid. And in fact, if my friends across the aisle would like to understand the real world impacts of the tens of thousands of Americans who've been laid off and the people who are suffering around the world, go home and talk to your own constituents, because we know they're coming to your town halls, and we know that behind closed doors, you are calling the president and you are calling secretaries and telling them that your constituents are upset and that you don't support what they're doing.
Señores, ¿sabían que una sola decisión política puede terminar afectando a miles de personas en todo el mundo? ¿Qué pasaría si les dijera que Elon Musk y Donald Trump están siendo acusados de desmantelar la política exterior de los Estados Unidos a su antojo? Yo sé que suena mucho a teoría de conspiración, ¿cierto? Pero no. Hoy veremos cómo es que desde el Congreso de los Estados Unidos se revelan acusaciones muy graves sobre cómo es que estos dos personajes están manejando los asuntos internacionales. Y créanme que la cosa no pinta para nada bien. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Amigos, hoy veremos a la congresista Melanie Stansbury cómo ha criticado las acciones de Donald Trump, de Elon Musk, de este Departamento de Eficiencia Gubernamental, la cual ella afirma que estas actividades son ilegales. Así que los invito a que se queden hasta el final del video porque les traigo los detalles más interesantes. Ok amigos, antes de que vayamos a ver esta audiencia en el Congreso, quiero ponerles un poco de contexto con lo que está pasando. Lo que se denuncia aquí es que la administración de Trump, junto con Elon Musk, están desmantelando la política exterior de Estados Unidos, pero de una manera muy caótica, ¿no? Y algo potencialmente muy peligroso. Ya hemos visto cómo se habla de despidos masivos en agencias, no solo las internas, sino que las de ayuda internacional. Hablamos de congelación de fondos cruciales, hasta un acercamiento un poco transparente, ¿no?, con países como Rusia. Por si fuese poco, también hay acusaciones de que Elon Musk se ha estado beneficiando de contratos federales, mientras su compañía enfrenta cuestionamientos por falta de transparencia. La pregunta, amigos, que primero tenemos que hacernos es esta: ¿es una estrategia bien calculada o simplemente hablamos de un desastre descontrolado? Quiero que me acompañen a ver el video completo de esta audiencia de la congresista Melanie Stansbury, en la cual ella lo explica de una manera bastante interesante. Veamos este clip.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. It's always a wild adventure here in the Oversight Committee. And as the language was just used, wild and sloppy is not what's happening in this committee, but what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing to our foreign affairs and foreign aid. And in fact, if my friends across the aisle would like to understand the real world impacts of the tens of thousands of Americans who've been laid off and the people who are suffering around the world, go home and talk to your own constituents, because we know they're coming to your town halls, and we know that behind closed doors, you are calling the president and you are calling secretaries and telling them that your constituents are upset and that you don't support what they're doing. So I do not appreciate you all sitting here pretending like this is not what you support, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the gutting of foreign aid and global realignment that's happening under Trump. They're dismantling this agency. They're withholding funds. They're firing tens of thousands of U.S. aid staff. They're hacking federal data systems. They're stranding aid workers across the world. International food aid is rotting in ports. American farmers have lost millions of dollars in income. And a global realignment with our foreign adversaries, including Vladimir Putin, is happening at a scale unlike anything we have seen in American history. And the administration knows that these activities are illegal. They know that they've overstepped their constitutional authority. They know they're violating statutory law. They know they're violating appropriations law. They know that they're violating federal employment laws. And they know that they are reversing American foreign policy in a way that we have never seen before. And Donald Trump and his allies are trying to redefine the Constitution by tweet. They're threatening federal judges, intimidating federal employees, and yes, even members of Congress using the Department of Justice. And why? We don't know, because not a single person from the administration has come here to testify in this committee or in any committee about what Doge and Elon Musk are actually doing. And if you look at the so-called transparency that Elon Musk put online, the math does not add up. Talk about wild and sloppy. Our friends across the aisle like to talk about how he's some sort of genius. And this dude couldn't even post a simple spreadsheet that adds up. It's literally off by tens of billions of dollars. You guys, that's wild. I mean, like, literally, that's wild. But in spite of this, our friends across the aisle are acting like everything's normal. And last night, they passed a budget resolution that not only is going to gut Medicaid and Medicare, but is going to make these cuts in federal firing permanent, even though they know it is making America less safe. And in the meantime, Elon Musk is actually awarding himself additional federal contracts. In fact, yesterday it was reported that he gave himself the FAA contract for communications. I mean, you guys, this is like graft, waste, fraud, abuse, all of the things. It's happening in front of your eyes, literally, and they are breaking the law while they cozy up to our foreign adversaries. And I know that Donald Trump thinks that he's a king because his social media, of course, he keeps repeating this. But let me say this to you, Mr. Trump. 250 years ago, the people of this great nation rejected a reckless, abusive king, and we won't go back. And for the thousands of federal workers out there, the aid workers, the advocates, and the people around the world who are impacted by these reckless and heartless and harmful and disgusting cuts that are impacting people across the world, know that we see you. We stand with you. We are fighting for you. We are in the courts. We are in Congress. We are in our communities, and we will hold this administration accountable. And we will not abandon our allies or our humanity. So with that, I say to all of you, be strong. We will fight back.
I now recognize myself for closing remarks.
Bueno amigos, acabamos de ver esta declaración y es bastante fuerte. Se mencionan, como les dije, despidos masivos, manipulación de fondos, hasta acusaciones de corrupción a gran escala, ¿no? Pero a ver, ¿qué significa realmente esto? Primero, la eliminación de fondos para ayuda internacional no es un simple recorte presupuestario. Es una declaración política. Estados Unidos históricamente ha usado el tema de ayuda exterior no solo como un gesto humanitario, siendo el país primermundista, sino como una herramienta de poder blando. Con esto, pues, mantienen relaciones estratégicas con otros países. Entonces, si Donald Trump está reduciendo este presupuesto, ¿a quién beneficia realmente? Porque no es a los países aliados, desde luego. Segundo, el hecho de que Elon Musk, una de las figuras creo que más influyentes en tecnología en estos últimos tiempos, está recibiendo contratos federales mientras al mismo tiempo sale a promover un discurso populista de independencia del gobierno. Y eso, amigos, es al menos cuestionable. Se nos está vendiendo la imagen de un empresario rebelde, pero sigue recibiendo dinero de los mismos organismos gubernamentales que él dice rechazar. Y tercero, la relación con Rusia, ¿no? Ya desde hace años hay muchas sospechas sobre esta cercanía entre Trump y Vladimir Putin. Y bueno amigos, yo creo que confirma, ¿no? Hay un realineamiento de Estados Unidos con adversarios históricos. ¿Qué gana Donald Trump con esto? ¿Qué gana Vladimir Putin?
Secure any new government contracts while he is working on Doge?
No, not if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the conflict.
Are you personally checking to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does. First of all, he wouldn't do it. And second of all, we're not going to let him do anything where there's a conflict of interest.
Well, 2 weeks later, and yes, apparently they are going to let him do it even when there's a conflict. And even when what they're letting him do will impact everyone who flies. Elon Musk's Starlink is set to score a major government contract involving the FAA communication system. New reporting in the Washington Post details how the Federal Aviation Administration is close to canceling a $2.4 billion contract to overhaul a communication system that serves as the backbone of the nation's air traffic control system, and awarding the work to Elon Musk's Starlink. That's according to two people briefed on the plans. It would be an especially extraordinary step for the typically cautious FAA, whose systems are vital to the safety of millions of air travelers every single day. The existing contract was awarded to Verizon in 2023 with the aim of upgrading a platform that different air traffic control facilities and FAA offices use to communicate with one another. This, of course, is coming 2 months into a year filled with harrowing and deadly aviation accidents all across our country. Joining our conversation, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller's here. John Heilman is still with us. I mean, John, if you stitch together, right, sort of the first three stories of the day, it's not just conflicts. It's conflicts with potential deadly consequences if things go sideways.
Right. I mean, Nicole, I swear, you and I are on some kind of telepathic wavelength, because I'm sitting here listening to, I've seen this story already about the grift here and the Starlink contract. And obviously, we've all seen these harrowing, obviously the collision over National Airport, but the harrowing footage of the midair, of the near miss at Midway yesterday. Everyone I know in America is freaking out right now about airline safety. And so here's the story of grift, in which the company that we're going to now we're going to privatize this piece of the FAA, and we're going to give it to the guys who missed Ebola when they were going through the funding, when they were doing their Doge stuff, just decided that, sorry, we missed the Ebola thing. We'll go back and fix that. And as we just heard, it hasn't, of course, been fixed, because it's an example of the kind of indiscriminate, brainless chopping, hacking, and cutting that these guys are doing. Is there any company that you less trust with the safety of our airspace right now than the one run by the guy whose most brilliant people are running around the government missing Ebola when they make cuts to the public health infrastructure? I mean, it's not just outlandish and ludicrous. It would, in any other circumstance, in a fictional world, it would be hilarious. It would be the stuff of the highest satire. But here we are.
Yeah, and I mean, Tim Miller, the problem for Donald Trump is that Elon Musk has not displayed competence so far. I mean, the grassroots of the Republican Party, including the MAGA base, have their hair on fire. They're so angry about cuts that impact them in their ruby red districts.
Amigos, no es solo un par de decisiones políticas aisladas, es un patrón donde se están debilitando instituciones claves. Se están beneficiando a ciertos empresarios. Se está dejando de lado compromisos internacionales, los que han definido a Estados Unidos por décadas. Pero ahora quiero saber cuál es la opinión de ustedes. ¿Creen que esto es parte de una estrategia, como les mencioné, o simplemente estamos viendo la consecuencia del caos de la administración de Trump? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en los comentarios. Hemos llegado hasta el final de este video. Como siempre, amigos, muchísimas gracias por haberme acompañado hasta este momento. Pues si me quieren apoyar, ya saben, dale un like al video, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.